At first, the picture looks assuring. Growth is holding up, inflation is under control, banks and companies are in good shape, credit is flowing, and the agriculture has benefited from a good monsoon. India's external liabilities remain low, foreign exchange reserves are strong, and policy credibility has improved. Overall, the economic survey presents a cautionary, confident assessment of the Indian economy. But that confidence comes with a clear warning. India's growth story is now unfolding in a world that is far less predictable than before. Global trade is fragmenting, and geopolitics is reshaping economic choices. Financial markets are more jittery and more reactive and are more vulnerable to sudden shocks. So, the challenge ahead, the survey argues, is not just about growing fast, but about growing resiliently and being prepared for volatility that can come with little or no warning. The survey outlines three broad scenarios for how 2026 could play out. The first one, and the most likely one, looks a lot like 2025. The world more or less functioned the way it did in 2025, but with a shrinking margin of safety. Growth continues, yet even small shocks can trigger outsized market reactions. Governments are forced to intervene in repeated manners to stabilize these conditions. This, the survey says, is not real stability. It is managed disorder. The second scenario, carrying a much similar probability, is a little more unsettling. A sharply fractured multipolar world where strategic rivalries intensify. In this situation, trade becomes more cohesive and sanctions are at play. Supply chains are re-engineered under political pressure rather than efficiency. Financial stress spreads more easily across the borders with fewer buffers to absorb the shocks. Countries are pushed into harder trade-offs between growth, autonomy, and stability. The third scenario is a lower probability, but the impact is very high. This involves a cascade of systematic shocks. Highly leveraged investments, like that in AI, unwinds at the same time as geopolitical escalation or trade disruption. Liquidity then tightens sharply, potentially triggering a global contraction worse than the 2008 financial crisis. Across all these scenarios, the survey knows that India is relatively better prepared than its peers. But insulation is not immunity. That's why the survey has a core message. India must maximize its domestic growth while also strengthening its buffers. In other words, India must run a marathon and a sprint at the same time, or run a marathon as if it's running a sprint. One of the survey's biggest concerns is with India's export profile. Over the past 5 years, it notes that service exports has grown much faster than merchandise exports. Service has helped stabilize the economy and earn valuable foreign exchange. But the survey says this is not enough. Manufacturing forces upgrades in infrastructure, logistics, skills and standards, and even strengthens the state capacity itself. This makes manufacturing not just an economic priority, but a strategic one. India's recent trade agreements, including the Free Trade Pact with the EU, reflects this shift. But the survey cautions that market access alone will not deliver results. To benefit from trade, India must be able to produce competitively. So, industrial policy is critical. Long-term competitiveness will depend on innovation, skilling, logistics, MSME scaling, and access to affordable capital, not just tariff walls that raises the cost for downstream exporters. These challenges lead the survey to its core idea. India needs to become a quote-unquote entrepreneurial state. This does not mean commercializing the state or giving priority to private interest. It means a state that can operate under uncertainty, one that structures risk, experiments, learns, and course corrects. Though the survey points to early signs of this approach, the survey is blunt on what is holding the economy back. It is not the lack of ideas or ambitions, but the incentive structure within the state. Good faith decisions taken under uncertainty are often subjected to retrospective audits, vigilant scrutiny, and legal challenges with little allowance for conditions under which they were made. The result is bureaucratic risk aversion, precisely when experimentation is needed the most. Countries that are successful in doing this created a space for experimentation. The survey takes the example of Japan, South Korea, and Singapore and say that these countries did it through specialized agencies, sectoral desks, and adaptive accountability frameworks. For India, the survey suggests similar tools: mission-based cells, regulatory sandboxes beyond fintech, legal protection for good faith decisions, and independent reviews focused on learning rather than blame. It notes that process reform is as needed as policy reforms. India's policy challenges do not end with just institutional reform, import substitution, or even getting the industrial policy right. There's a larger goal here: strategic resilience. That means building domestic capacity to withstand external shocks, building buffers, and investing in national strength. The survey invokes a line that is often attributed to Lenin: there are decades where nothing happens, and a few weeks where decades happen. It suggests that we are living in such a moment. In a world moving faster and breaking more often, India has little choice. It must run a marathon and run it like a sprint. Thank you for watching this video, and for more such videos, subscribe to The Hindu.